My parents didn't yell when they found out. That was the first thing I noticed. No raised voices, no slammed doors. Just a tight, brittle silence that settled over the living room like dust after something breaks. We were sitting on opposite couches, the air heavy with the smell of stale coffee and lemon polish. I had mentioned the house casually, the way you mention a new pair of shoes or a restaurant you liked. I closed last week, I said. It finally went through. My mother blinked. My father's jaw tightened. You bought a house, my father said slowly, like he was testing the words. Without talking to us. Yes, I replied. I did. The room seemed to shrink. My mother set her mug down carefully, too carefully. Why wouldn't you consult us? She asked. Her tone was calm, but there was something sharp underneath it. I waited. I'd learned to do that. Silence usually encouraged them to say the part they thought I should already understand. My father leaned forward. Because we had plans, he said. What kind of plans? I asked, though something in my chest already knew. My mother exhaled through her nose. We assumed your sister would move in, she said. With her husband. And the kids. All three of them unspoken but present. A family of 5. Into my house. I felt the weight of it settle in my stomach. Not surprise. Recognition. My name is Elena Wright. I'm 32 years old, and the day my parents realized I hadn't consulted them about buying my house was the day they expected me to hand it over anyway. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. I'd spent years preparing for this house without realizing I was also preparing for this moment. Late nights balancing budgets. Quiet weekends touring places alone. I never told my parents the details because details had a way of becoming expectations in my family. My sister had always needed more. More space. More patience. More understanding. When she married, that need multiplied. When the kids came, it became unquestionable. Elena will help, my mother used to say. She's independent. Independent had always meant available. I didn't buy this house for anyone else, I said carefully. My father frowned. You're being selfish. There was the word that arrived whenever I stepped outside the role they'd assigned me. My mother shook her head. We thought you'd be happy. They're struggling. You have room. I thought of the listing photos, the empty rooms I'd imagined filling slowly, deliberately. Of mornings I hadn't yet lived. Of quiet. I said no, I replied. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. My father stood. You can't just cut us out of decisions like this. I didn't, I said. I made one. My mother's eyes filled. After everything we've done for you. A memory drifted in uninvited. Me at 17 packing my own lunch while my sister slept in. Me at 22 covering a bill because you're better with money. Me nodding, always nodding. I'm not cutting you out, I said. I'm setting a boundary. My father laughed, short and humorless. That's a nice word for abandoning family. I'm not abandoning anyone, I replied. I'm just not offering my house. They didn't hear the difference. The calls started that night. My mother first, then my father, then my sister. Messages stacked up, each one heavier than the last. We're just trying to help. You're overreacting. Think about the kids. I didn't respond. Over the next few days the story spread. Not the truth. A version of it. That I'd bought a house and refused to share. That I'd turned my back on family. That I'd changed. I had. When my sister finally called, her voice was sharp. Mom says you won't even discuss it. There's nothing to discuss, I said. You have extra rooms, she snapped. They're not empty, I replied. They're mine. She scoffed. You've always been like this. Acting independent. Another memory surfaced. Me at 12. Being told to give up my room when relatives visited because I was more adaptable. I'm not acting, I said quietly. I am independent. She hung up on me. The breaking point came a week later when my parents showed up unannounced at the house. My house. The one they hadn't seen yet. They stood on the porch, my mother's arms crossed, my father's expression hard. Behind them, my sister waited in the car with her husband and kids. As if the decision had already been made. My father gestured toward the house. We need to talk. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The late afternoon light stretched long shadows across the lawn. Somewhere nearby, a lawn mower droned steadily. No, I said calmly. We don't. My mother's voice trembled. You'd really shut us out like this? I'm not shutting you out, I replied. I'm keeping my space. My sister opened the car door, clearly expecting movement. Expecting permission. I stayed where I was. My father's face darkened. If you don't let them move in, he said, don't expect us to be part of your life. The words hung there meant to scare me. I thought of the empty rooms inside. The quiet I'd earned. The life I was building. I understand, I said. That was when they realized I meant it. The silence after my answer didn't feel dramatic. It felt exposed. Like I had stepped outside without a coat and realized the air was colder than expected, but survivable. My parents stood on the porch for a moment longer, as if waiting for me to flinch, to call them back, to soften the line I'd drawn. I didn't. My father shook his head slowly. My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. She turned toward the car where my sister sat rigidly in the front seat, children restless in the back. No one got out. No one waved. The engine started, gravel crunching under the tires as they pulled away. I stood there until they were gone. Inside, the house felt strangely loud in its quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes clicked. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, then stopped. I leaned my forehead against the door and breathed until the tightness in my chest loosened. That night, memories came in fragments. My sister borrowing money she never repaid. My parents praising my independence whenever it made their lives easier. Family dinners where decisions were announced, not discussed. I remembered being 19, standing in the kitchen while my mother explained why my sister needed the spare room more than I did. You'll adapt, she'd said, the same way she always did. I had adapted. Too well. The messages started the next morning. My mother, I didn't raise you to be like this. My father, you're choosing a house over family. My sister, you're really going to let kids suffer because of your ego? I read them once. Then I archived them. At work, I moved through meetings on autopilot. My hands shook slightly when I poured coffee. My mind kept replaying the moment on the porch, the expectation in their eyes. I'd never seen it so clearly before, how certain they were that I would fold. During lunch, I walked outside and sat on a bench, the smell of sunscreen and hot pavement thick in the air. I thought about the word selfish, how easily it had been assigned to me, how rarely it had been applied to them. That evening, my sister showed up alone. She knocked hard, impatient. When I opened the door, she didn't bother with pleasantries. You embarrassed us, she said. I set a boundary, I replied. She laughed sharply. You always hide behind therapy words. I stepped aside, letting her in just far enough to keep the conversation contained. She looked around, eyes assessing, already measuring what could be taken. This place is big, she said. You don't need all of it. I don't need to justify it, I said calmly. She crossed her arms. Mom and Dad are devastated. I didn't devastate them, I replied. I disappointed them. She scoffed. Same thing. No, I said. Disappointment happens when expectations aren't met. Devastation happens when something is taken. Nothing was taken from them. She stared at me, searching for the version of me that would apologize. You've changed, she said. Yes, I replied. Because I stopped volunteering. Her eyes flashed. You think you're better than us now? I think I'm allowed to choose, I said. She left without saying goodbye. After that, the quiet stretched. Days passed without calls. Without texts. It felt unnatural at first, like a limb gone numb. Then it felt peaceful. I settled into the house slowly. I unpacked boxes I'd left untouched. Hung curtains I liked. Cooked meals without worrying about accommodating anyone else's schedule. I began to understand how much of my energy had been spent anticipating needs that weren't mine. One afternoon, my uncle stopped by. He'd always been the quiet one at family gatherings, sitting at the edge of conversations, observing. He worked with his hands, smelled faintly of wood and dust. They're upset, he said gently. I know, I replied. He nodded. But they're also used to you fixing things. I'm done fixing, I said. A small smile tugged at his mouth. Good. That support mattered more than I expected. Weeks later, my father called. His voice was subdued. Your mother's taking this hard. I'm not punishing her, I said. I'm protecting myself. He sighed. We didn't realize how much pressure we put on you. I believed him. And I also knew realization didn't erase impact. I need time, I said. So do we, he replied. The call ended without resolution. That was okay. The first family gathering I skipped felt strange. A birthday dinner I didn't attend. Photos posted later. Smiles that looked slightly forced. No one asked where I was. They already knew. I spent that evening at home, windows open, listening to laughter drift in from somewhere else. I felt a twinge of loss, then relief. Both could exist. Late one night, I sat on the floor of my bedroom sorting through old papers. I found a notebook from my 20s, filled with lists of goals that all revolved around stability, safety, approval. I closed it and slid it into a drawer. I didn't need that version of myself anymore. The house felt less like a symbol and more like a container, holding my life without demanding anything back. I began to sleep better. To breathe deeper. To imagine a future that didn't require permission. One evening, my mother sent a short message. I'm trying to understand. I typed, then erased, then typed again. So am I. It was the truest thing I could offer. I realized then that cutting ties didn't always mean severing them forever. Sometimes it meant loosening the grip until circulation returned. The choice I'd made wasn't about rejecting my family. It was about choosing myself. And that choice, once made, couldn't be undone. The house didn't feel victorious after that. It felt quiet in a way that invited honesty. Not the kind of silence that waits to explode, but the kind that settles in once a storm has moved on and the air has decided to stay clear. I noticed the change in myself first. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for another message that would demand an answer. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head. I stopped imagining arguments that hadn't happened yet. The constant low hum of vigilance faded, leaving space for things I'd forgotten how to enjoy. One morning, I woke up early without an alarm. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, pale and unhurried. The house smelled faintly of clean laundry and coffee grounds from the night before. I lay there for a moment, listening to the stillness, realizing I wasn't bracing for anything. A memory drifted in, soft but persistent. Me at 8 years old, standing in the doorway while my parents discussed who would get the larger bedroom after a renovation. My sister needed it more, they'd said. I'd nodded, already practicing the art of shrinking. I didn't shrink anymore. Weeks passed. My parents didn't show up. My sister didn't call. The distance felt strange, then normal. Like a muscle learning a new resting position. I filled the house slowly, intentionally. A reading chair by the window. Plants on the kitchen sill. Art I liked, not art that blended. Each choice felt small, but together they formed something solid. A life that didn't orbit anyone else's needs. One afternoon, my mother asked if she could come by. She stood on the porch with a tentative smile, hands clasped like she wasn't sure where to put them. When I opened the door, she didn't step inside right away. "Hey, she asked. The question mattered more than anything she could have said. "Yes," I replied. She walked through the house carefully, noticing changes without commenting on them. She touched the back of a chair, paused by the window, breathed in. "I didn't realize how much of you we asked for," she said quietly. I didn't rush to respond. Outside, dry leaves scraped across the sidewalk. Somewhere nearby, a radio played faintly through an open window. "You didn't ask," I said. "You assumed." She nodded. "We thought independence meant you didn't need us." "I needed respect," I replied. She swallowed hard. "I'm still learning the difference." That conversation didn't heal everything. But it softened something sharp between us. When she left, she hugged me carefully, like someone relearning the shape of a relationship. My father took longer. When he finally came over, he stood in the living room with his hands behind his back, surveying the space like he was seeing it for the first time. "You made it your own," he said. "I needed to," I replied. He nodded. "We leaned on you too much." It wasn't an apology. But it was an acknowledgement. I accepted it for what it was. The first family gathering I attended after everything felt different. A small anniversary dinner at a relative's house. The smell of charcoal lingered in the air. Laughter rose and fell unevenly. People glanced at me, then looked away. No one asked about my house. No one suggested arrangements. The absence of expectation felt like progress. My sister stayed distant. Polite. Guarded. We spoke only when necessary. I didn't push. Some bridges don't need to be crossed immediately. Later that night I drove home alone. The road was quiet, headlights cutting through the dark. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically, casting a warm glow over the steps. Inside, the house welcomed me without question. I kicked off my shoes and sat on the floor for a moment, back against the couch, breathing in the familiar scent of wood and clean air. I thought about how close I'd come to letting guilt dictate my future. How easily I'd almost traded peace for approval. I understood now that boundaries don't destroy families. They expose the ones that depend on silence to function. Months later, my mother sent a message. "I'm proud of you." I read it twice. Then I replied, "Thank you." That was enough. If someone had told me years ago that buying a house would cost me relationships, I might have hesitated. I might have delayed. I might have consulted people who didn't need a vote. But what I learned was this: when you build something on your own terms, the people who truly care will eventually adjust. And the ones who don't were never invested in you, only in what you provided. The house became a place of routine rather than resistance. Morning coffee, evening walks, quiet weekends. I stopped explaining my choices to imaginary critics. I started trusting myself without footnotes. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Not because choosing yourself is easy, but because choosing yourself is allowed. That night, I locked the doors and turned off the lights one by one. The house settled around me, familiar and steady. I climbed the stairs slowly, my hand brushing the wall, grounding myself in something I had claimed honestly. At the top, I paused and listened. No voices planning my future. No expectations pressing in. No role waiting to be filled. Just space. And for the first time, that space was mine. Sometimes choosing yourself is quiet.